Hey everybody, Andrew with Lowen Games here with a review of New Kingdom Games, a game called New Kingdom Gardeners. It's a game by Jack Dunbar that is a tableau worker placement game that plays in 30 to 60 minutes for 2 to 4 players, where you play a gardener. The master gardener has assigned you and your fellow gardeners jobs in the garden, and your job is basically to plant seeds, prune the thorns, and produce the most fruit. And the winner of the game is the one who will be named Master Gardener when the garden returns. A game full of allegory and very interesting. So I am excited to review this game. It's like the first one that I have reviewed. But before I jump into the review, let me just explain my intent. So I plan on reviewing, not previewing. So these reviews are unpaid, and I'm just doing them for fun. This one I was asked as a favor to give a review, and so here I am giving my honest opinion. So I've recorded my biases in a separate video, but I think it's very important to acknowledge that this is not my typical cup of tea, and so I'm going to be talking about that a little bit. But if you want to go learn more about my biases, go check out the other video that I just posted in regard to my biases in board games. So let's talk about how this game actually plays. So the first thing is you are going to play. So you get your own tableau. Here we go. The top right here. You get your own tableau, and there's a 4 spaces at the top that you use for workers. And then you're on the lower left, you've got your character, which is like an asymmetrical character that you would select at the beginning of the game that gives you a certain power that will vary from game to game. And then you have the 3 spots to the right of that are for seeds and thorns. So the idea is that you will place workers into your tableau to get new actions, and then you'll activate those with doves, which are these awesome wooden dove meeples here. And then over the course of the game, you're going to draw seeds and thorn cards that you will play into your tableau down here. And what I like most about this game, I'll say, is what I call the cascading mechanic. The game calls it the creep mechanic, where if I place a thorn or a seed into my tableau, I place it on the leftmost space. So the space that this thorn that my mouse is hovering over is currently residing in, I would place my seed card or the other thorn card right there. And that would cause the others to slide over. Let's say if all these spaces were filled though, so right now you can see the space is empty, and the thorn here would slide over. Something really interesting happens. So I place another card down when they're all full. The rightmost card actually cascades into my opponent's player board. So you get a really cool interaction with all the players around the table that are playing cards. They might play seeds in their garden that cause thorns to cascade into mine. And this provides some really interesting gameplay. And I actually found it extremely fun for during our family games. So I played this game at 2 players and 4 players, and so my feedback is based upon a handful of games that I've played over the last few weeks, and so here we go. So the first thing is, let's talk about the pros of the game. Now that I've kind of shared with you what the game does, let's talk about the pros. So the game is competitive, which is normally not my cup of tea. I tend to like co-op games, but it plays relatively quick, which is a really important element of a co-op game that I enjoy. I love games like Dice Throne and Radlands and Star Realms and you name any competitive game that would play quickly, I really like. And the reason that I prefer games that play quickly is because my player number 2, my wife, is we just enjoy co-op games together. And if there's a competitive game that takes a really long time, it can be a big drag. But New Kingdom Gardeners does not have that problem, and that's really important to me. So the theme in this game is relatively light. You can tell, it's allegorically a Christian theme, but overall the theme is quite innocuous. And that said, it does play really well, really nicely, the theme of being a gardener into the actual mechanics themselves, which I very much enjoy. I think it's really important that a theme would flow well with the mechanics of the game and just not feel pasted on. And this game flows very well. The next thing is it's not a campaign game. I love campaign games that offer skill expression and character expressions. But what I love about the game is that it's gateway. And it's good for 2 to 4 players. You can teach it really quick. And in particular, it was really good for my kids. Made some really memorable moments with the kids playing this game, which I really enjoyed. So the cascading mechanic is, I believe this, it's very innovative. The way that it causes you to interact with your opponents is fun and made for, when I shoved a thorn onto my daughter's tableau, she, into her garden, she was like, oh no. And when my kids shoved one onto my wife's garden, it was like cheers all around. It's just so funny. We did have a lot of fun. So it's really easy to understand for kids. There is an opportunity for some skill expression. We'll talk about strategic depth in a little bit, but one thing I also liked was that the instructions for setup provides a very consistent experience at both player counts that I tested. Every single time it felt very consistent, and the way that you set it up is kind of like, I'll say it reminds me in a way of Pandemic, where you cut the deck and then you place what is called the Master Gardener card toward the bottom of the pile. To the thing that ends the game. Depending on the number of players, you're going to draw 20, 30, or 40 cards, you're going to form a deck of 20, 30, or 40 cards. There's some variability in that because there are more cards than that. And it was very consistent. So I think the place of this game, which I actually list as a pro, is that it's a good filler game or a preamble to the big game. When you have game night, let's say you have 4 hours, you're going to play a big game. So you bring out Terraforming Mars or Deliverance or Scythe or whatever game that you want to play, or Agricola that I have back there, or Unseen. That game is going to last, let's say 2, maybe it lasts 3 hours, depending on the number of players. In a 4-hour game night, you have another hour to play something, but you can't repeat a play of the big game that you all picked. So I love having a filler game like this that just can slot in for that extra hour. So I look at that as a pro as well. And then lastly, I'll mention the memorable moments. We had some really fun times playing this game. My kids are gamers. They play kid games like My Little Scythe, Catan Jr., and all sorts of other, kind of gateway kids games. I'm getting my oldest daughter into Dice Throne and other games as well. But a lot of the games that are appropriate for kids on my shelf, I have 200 games over there. They feel like they drag on a long time, and when I feel like I want to be done, it's only halfway. So what I really enjoyed about this one is that each play of ours took anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, which is well within its 30 to 60 minute timeline that it gives to play the game. And it left memorable moments. And then it kind of, at the crescendo of the excitement, that's right around the time that it ended, which is excellent because you never want to get all the way to the top and then have your excitement dwindle and dwindle and dwindle and finally end down here, and so I really enjoyed that. So the cascading mechanic of the thorns and seeds kind of getting pushed over onto your opponent's player boards, or others pushing theirs onto yours, was really quite entertaining. And in the end, it's all, you win based on the number of victory points, the number of fruit that you have generated, which is a resource in the game. So before I give you my review scores, I'm going to talk about some cons. So the first one is, and I think that this is able to be improved, but the strategic depth, I feel, is a bit limited. So I tend to, again, I'm like the hardcore, I want to play Twilight Imperium for 7 hours. If I play a competitive game, let's just do that. But this game, it's faster, but I felt like the strategic depth was a bit limited because it boils down to stacking workers correctly. In fact, let's go back to this thing here. I'll show you guys where I feel the strategic depth really is. It's in this team bonuses section. And so there is strategic depth in the game. But so what you want to do is you appoint workers. You have fishermen or other types of workers that you would place on your tableau that give you new types of actions. And if you were to place them, so you can actually stack the same type of workers upon themselves. So if you did that on your opponent's garden, you get more resources than if you did it in your own. And that's one of the other interesting things. I felt like there was quite a lot of player interaction in this game. It didn't feel like a solo game, kind of like, Wingspan oftentimes feels like you're playing a solo game, but you're all playing the solo game together. There's not quite a ton, there's not all that much player interaction there. But in this one, it really felt like there was a lot. So you actually get more fruit, which you can see here, if you place these workers into your opponent's gardens, which I thought was really interesting. And so in addition to that, you've got these thorn cards that are placed around the board. You are supposed to prune them, which removes them from play and gives you resources. You get more if you prune from your opponent's garden than you do from your own, which allows some strategic depth. You figure, all right, the person across from me in my 4-player game, that thorn is going to make its way around to me eventually, so I'm going to prune that one, and that kind of thing. I feel that the strategic depth would be improved a little bit if they cause the pruning of the thorns right now. You in essence pay 2 fruit to earn 3 fruit after you prune. So you gain one victory point at the end of the game for pruning that way. And I feel like it would be cool if they added a little bit of variance or variability in the pruning of the thorns. Like if I prune the rose thorns, it would be cool if I got some sort of effect that was different than if I pruned the weeds. So that's something I think that they could do. And then I guess that's really my only other con, other than my obvious biases, which are to heavier campaign games and that sort of thing. So let's talk about my score. I'm going to give it 2 scores. One is my personal score, and then the other one would be my score of where I think this game belongs in its genre of games. So worker placement, tableau building, and that sort of thing. My number 1 in this genre is Everdell, because you're building your tableau, you're placing workers and that sort of thing, but it's a very different kind of game than Everdell. Everdell's like the game night, we're playing this one for 2 to 3 hours, and this game is filler, so it's not 1-to-1 comparison. But if my 10 out of 10 is Everdell in this particular genre, then I would say I'd give this game like a 7, maybe a 7.5 out of 10, because I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was it would be a good experience for somebody that likes those kinds of games. And I think that if they made a few small tweaks to the strategic depth with those thorns, I would raise it to an 8. So that's where I think that the general audience would receive this game, and I think that's a good score. But then, so if I were to give it another game based on my tastes, I feel it's a little bit like playing Parks. Parks has a very similar style where it's all of the art is unique, just like this game. All of the art is unique, and my personal score for this game for myself is actually a 6 out of 10, and mainly because I prefer the heavier games, and with a little bit of a strategic depth boost, as I mentioned, I think it's going to go to a 7 out of 10, which places it in on my list about equivalent to Wingspan and Parks. So to give you an idea of how I feel about other games of somewhat similar style, again, my 10 out of 10 in this particular genre is Everdell, but just because we really enjoy Everdell. So the last question I'd answer is, should you back this or not? Am I going to back this or am I not? Is probably the more appropriate way to say it. When it hits Kickstarter, I will be backing this game. While the theme and the character expression are a bit light for my taste, I think it's a perfect game to play with friends and kids. It was a really quick to learn. I felt like it was a lot of fun with the family, and so me at game night, I'm all about playing the big games, but I need a game like this to fill. It's a really awesome game. It's a good. It's the theme is a Christian theme, which is a pro for me. But again, it's quite innocuous. It's just a very good family theme, and it's really easy to understand for the kids, and so on and so forth. So because of that, I don't have a game like this on my shelf, and I'm backing it. So I have a few games that do a good job fitting this role, and I think that is games that the kids can play, that the adults have fun with, that are easy to teach, that play relatively quickly. There aren't that many games out there. There are a lot of games that say they're like that, but you're left with, like My Little Scythe. It's like an hour and a half and nobody's finishing the game. Come on, guys. I really very much enjoy it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Again, I'm Andrew Lowen with Lowen Games, signing out.